un par de minutitos para que se sigan ingresando el resto de los invitados y mientras vamos a continuar. Bueno, voy a dar estas indicaciones para la gente que nos está acompañando en inglés. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in this webinar. If you are listening to us in English, this webinar is going to be in Spanish, but if you are listening to us in English, you can change the mode to interpretation. We have a live interpretation now, so please click in the Zoom controls in the mode of to change to English, and you can hear the audio in English. Ok, bueno, rápidamente unas reglas básicas para este
Okay, so some basic rules for this webinar. We ask you to please have a space of learning and respect. We request that your microphones and cameras are deactivated during the webinar to be able to hear the presenters. Please write your full name, country, and organization in the chat box. Throughout the seminar, please write any questions you might have on the chat box as well on Zoom. Or if you're on Facebook, you can do so also on the comments section on Facebook. The questions will be answered after the presenters have finished their presentation. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We are very happy that you are with us today with this topic of impact investment in the Mesoamerican Reef. I would like to welcome the presenters today. We are joined by Graciela Suárez, or known as Grace. She's the director of the Mar Invest New Ventures Initiative. And Karla Gallardo is also with us. She's the CEO in VIWALA. Thank you for joining us. In a few minutes, they're going to begin their presentation.
Listo, no sé si ya por ahí pueden ver la presentación. Grace, Carla.
Sí, buenísimo.
Grace and Carla, we are going to be giving you the floor now, and welcome. Thank you, Natalie, and everyone for joining us today. We are both very excited to be able to talk about the impact investment in the MAR. A brief introduction of who we are. We were already presented by Natalie, but we are part of two organizations. We represent these two Mexican organizations. The first one is called VIWALA. This is a financing agency which seeks to close a gap of finance for businesses that are women-led or with impact to women. It's a capital for impulse for several sectors that are more vulnerable or very little access to the traditional banking system. There are different financing mechanisms being implemented. Blended finance in Mexico, which we're going to also learn about, and as well in Central America. New Ventures is a platform seeking acceleration of impact and environmental entrepreneurship with business and funding, ecosystem projects. There are different areas of Latin America that are being implemented in Colombia, Latin America in general. These are the two organizations that we are going to be representing today. First of all, I want to talk to you about Mar Invest and its objective. Mar Invest is a partnership which seeks to unlock private capital for investment in reef conservation in the Mar ecoregion through the market-based solutions, entrepreneurship, and innovative finance, which this is all part of the Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, Mexico. This partnership is financed by the Global Fund for Coral Reefs with a duration of 8 years. We are in June, we just finalized the first year. And throughout the next years, we hope to be able to mobilize, create, and support different companies or businesses throughout the region. Why the Mesoamerican Reef? And I'm sure many of you are aware and know this reef very well. Those who don't know it, it covers stretches from Quintana Roo in Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, and Honduras, and it's the reef barrier, the longest actually barrier in the Atlantic Ocean and the second largest reef in the world. It has transborders. It's transboundary reef with covering 1,000 kilometers with a cultural biodiversity as well as biological biodiversity. All the communities and different groups that live and depend from the reef are approximately 3 million people. The annual value of the Mar is about $4.5 billion divided in tourism, which is one of the major industries in the region, fishing and coastal marine protection for different natural phenomena, hurricane, storms, etc. A little bit about the Alliance, Mar Invest Alliance. We have 4 components with 6 allies or partners. The first component is called Mar Leadership. It's a training component to promote skills and capacities for individuals in the region. Working in any sector, whether it's private or public, for the conservation of the Mar. Through this program, led by the Mexican Fund for Conservation of Nature, we seek to continue training agents of change and who in the end have the power in the sector to perform actions and make changes towards conservation. We have also financial solutions. There are 2 main components in this regard. We have the banking investment solutions. A member of the team helps different companies or businesses in the region to raise investment, to get financing, and also creating links and for investment when checking their numbers and checking their investment plan, etc. All this is part of it. This person from VIWALA helps the design for the mechanism for financing with blended financing tools to ensure there is growth capital for the whole Marinvest capital. Everything tailored to the needs that have been identified by VIWALA and New Ventures. Then we have the monitoring and evaluation of impact coordinated by Healthy Reefs for Healthy People. And the idea is to develop a strategy of monitoring and evaluation for the program and projects, as well as to be able to have an annual report of the health of the reef and be able to make decisions for investment, for projects to be supported, and what are the conditions at the public level. And we also have the MARTAF it's an English acronym, Mesoamerican Reef Technical Assistance Facility, which is an area on training, acceleration programs led by MARF Fund and New Ventures. Throughout these 8 years, we will have 8 events of entrepreneurship, 8 fairs to be able to identify these and promote at the technical level these different entrepreneurships to escalate technically and in impact. The cross-cutting component of these 4 components is the impact investment, which we will see soon. This includes financing tools, training tools. This approach is what we seek to do for this partnership to be able to obtain the expected results for conservation and for long-term sustainability. Karla, go ahead. You have the floor.
Hola, ¿me escuchan?
Sí, sí te escuchamos.
Perfecto, disculpen, es que estaba aquí teniendo unos problemas, no podía,
I apologize for
me debe de dar autorización para prender mi video.
the issues I'm having. I have video issues,
Sin rostro. ¿Cómo están?
and
Soy
I will begin.
tengo el privilegio de
I'm
dirigir
Karla Gallardo, and I have the privilege of leading an organization that is called VIWALA. And as Grace explained to us, there are 2 topics that it's important to clarify what we're talking about when we talk about impact investment and blended finance. What I'm going to tell you about today is, what is this impact investment? Have you heard about this maybe? It's a movement that's growing. In Mexico, it's been existing for over 20 years and globally as well. Impact investment are investments that are carried out, and these are keywords that are in orange. They're investments that are conducted with an intention. So specific investment with social and environmental impact. And it's important also to note that they have to be measurable and with a financial return. There are several key elements. They have to be intentional, and they should create impact, environmental, social, positive impact. It should be measurable and generate returns. What the size of the returns, I will tell you about this soon. When we talk about impact evaluation,
Carla, me comentan que ya puedes abrir tu cámara.
Ya la tengo abierta.
Ah, súper.
Vale. Muy bien. Gracias. Bueno, cuando hablamos de la
when we talk about impact investment, the first thing we need to talk about is when we talk about investment, when money is being invested, what are these companies looking for? They're looking for an impact. It's a very simple component. Businesses that from its core business are seeking environmental and social impact. Whatever their product is and whatever they sell generates more social and positive impact, not necessarily social responsible businesses, which is a different aspect. A business that is socially responsible is whatever business that sells whatever it is, which donates a part of its income to a positive project. Impact investment is at its core the generation of social impact and environmental impact. We have companies with organic production, for example, could be considered impact organizations. businesses that sell solar panels to rural communities can be also considered. This is what is helping promote development to rural communities.
Entonces, lo que tenemos acá con esto de la inversión de impacto, como les decía hace unos momentos, tenemos todo
So
un
what we have is an ecosystem that is worth $1 trillion. And when I'm talking about it, what is $1 trillion? It's an investment that is being done already in these types of companies or seeking companies that are growing. This is being monitored throughout the years, and it's growing exponentially. $1 trillion is still very little compared to the size of our planet. And what we are doing as part of our ecosystem is to give more and more presentations on these topics to create an impact. As you heard me mention, I talked about an ecosystem. When I talk about this, it means everything that's on screen. We have investors, the two types of investors. There are investors that have decided to use its whole patrimony or investment for this type of investment. There's also new venture accelerators, the core business accelerators, which its core business goal is to accelerate this type of companies. There are obviously companies that, as I mentioned before, have different components. There are many methods to measure positive impact in the environment. There are different providers, different methodologies. There's a lot of progress being done. There's even conferences now, such as conservation conferences. There's also conferences for impact investment, where all these agents, investors, businesses get together to think about how to attract more investment, how to make this more attractive, how to turn my traditional investment into different focus. Philanthropy can also migrate to impact investment. It's important to note that we're seeing this aspect of impact investment, which contributes to the 2030 development goals. I don't know if you've noticed, but the need for investment to be able to obtain these SDGs requires a lot of money. And conservation funds, it's complicated. So impact investment allows us to combine private funding or impact funding with these funds that come from development funds to obtain these goals. There are measurements in this regard that for each dollar that is being invested by the development banking for the accomplishment of the SDGs, we need $3 for the private sector. So the private sector is helping us promote this funding process. But we have a very important challenge, and this is we're getting into the nitty-gritty, as we say. The whole issue is in impact investment is that imagine this triangle that we're looking into here. There are different companies. The ones on top have a lower risk and greater possibilities of obtaining investment, and the lower level are companies with greater risk, but there are many, and many of our developing countries have this reality. If we think about these companies in our countries, we know there are very few that check all the boxes to be attractive for investors. And number three are the majority of the businesses. Number 2 and 3 are an average in a developing country, 98% of the businesses. We call them SMEs. And what is happening here? What happens is that when we talk about impact investment, we are talking about any type of investment. We have an impact that we want to generate environmentally and socially. But when we're talking about pure investment, it is very easy for financing to invest for type 1 businesses because they have accelerated growth, they have disruptive business models, they're solving problems, and impact business that is attractive in category 1. It has a technology or innovation that is being able to come up with solutions, even environmental solutions that are important. They have returns, financial returns close to the market, and obviously access to financing. These businesses have access to financing. There is an ecosystem behind them that allows for investment and facilitates investment towards them. What is the issue is how can we make all these investors that are aware of the situation and unaware of it can also invest in businesses of the categories 2 and 3. Businesses in the under 2 obviously have a little greater risk than number 1, but they're stable. They have a traditional business model. Doesn't mean it's a bad business model. They can pay for investment and credit, but they don't grow so fast and not as disruptive as category 1. This could be any business in the developing country. And their financial returns is a little below the market, and the access to financing is very expensive. So that means they are creating an impact. They exist with a traditional model, not yielding financing return, but have expensive financing, which is not so logic. So what is happening is they fail or they can't grow as they should because they're stuck in a cycle, a vicious cycle. And the category 3, there are complicated businesses. They're small businesses. They're usually the businesses of self-employment. That's the product of self-employment. They don't have access to the traditional labor system, and individuals that decide to start a business, a small business. They are traditional business model businesses. They don't have any financing access at all. So what is happening, and this is the challenge we have. Number 1, businesses are checked. Number 2 and 3 need instruments to be able to have access to accessible finance. And this is obviously against any financing theory. Any colleague would tell me that the greater the risk, the more financial the risk. So with this traditional economies, we are increasing the risk through mechanisms such as this one called blended finance, which is a term that is part of what we are doing with Marinvest. What is blended finance? Basically, as graphically as possible, or the more clear as possible, it's access to the businesses of categories 2 and 3 with a different approach. Blended finance comes from the term blending, like a blender, like as you see in the image. So that's where the term comes from. Basically, what we're doing with this instrument is we are combining private funding, market private funding. This fund, private funds, is used to investing in any type of business, expecting market returns. Market returns depends on what type of risk your business represents. These are funds that are being received, but combined with private funds below the market. So we have traditional investors on top. Impact investors are also traditional investors are not seeking such a high investment if they can receive or they can see there's an impact being created. And of course, they expect return. And that is the interesting thing. It's not only to be able to create an impact. And finally, there are philanthropy resources. This is all part of the discussion and how do we ensure these philanthropy resources are made available to these businesses. The philanthropy world, there is access that needs to be done to hit the gas, as they would say, to accelerate these businesses. All these funds, all this funding is blended with and producing adequate products, we call them, to promote development of type 2 and 3 businesses. So they are obviously adequate products. So what are adequate products? When we talk about adequate products, we talk about cost and the products that are these financial products cannot be expensive because they generate exclusion. They cannot be paid. They are risky. They can drown with these interests. The terms are very important. There's periods of grace. There's more patience required to be able to expect growth to happen and to be receiving return, payment periods, guarantees, fees are all part of adequate products that allow us, this mixture allows us for structure in these products. The second aspect is business advisory, business counseling. So working with this experience that we have had of 20 years, financial inclusion is not only about the money, it's also about counseling, about advisory, how to teach these category 2 and 3 businesses to manage their money, how to make cash flows, prevention, administration, financial administration, and how to sell more as well. Any business wants to sell more with the lowest cost possible, but also now, in this case, creating impact, social and environmental impact. That is also part of the advisory that we're looking into. Finally, this creates impacts for different beneficiaries. We work with different groups that are minorities. We work with women, LGBT groups, groups that are restoring and protecting the reef, and communities that are creating an impact of different sorts. So that's very interesting, you might wonder, but what does this have to do with the MAR? So the relationship is through MAR Invest, what Grace was telling you about. With MAR Invest, what we're looking at is to attract these tools for blended finance to ensure that businesses that are close to the reef, the MAR reef, have what they need to grow but protecting the reef. So what we're looking for is we're working with all the different businesses that are close to the reef system. In the early stage is working with category 3 businesses, which are still young and small businesses, with a program of leadership, MAR leadership, incubators, promoting this development of skills, the flexible products as also to be able to use this blended finance tools. There are growth businesses that are between 2 and 1. There's an acceleration program for these there that are being involved. We also have financial products that are being developed and correspond to the needs. And finally, we're working with mature stage businesses. What we're doing here is we're helping them in the investment banking, to bringing them together with possible investors to help that- the financing for those that need to grow. We do a lot of networking and partnerships to help with the benefits of these businesses. Grace is going to tell you a little bit more of the acceleration program.
Buenísimo. ¿Le puedes dar a la que sigue, Natalie, porfis?
So
Y bueno, pensando un poco en estas
thinking about these 3 stages
distintas formas de apoyo que tenemos,
and the different forms
queríamos platicarles
that we have
los
here in
objetivos.
Marinvest, I'm going to tell you about the objectives of the acceleration program. The acceleration program seeks to provide
Para estas
training
que contribuyan a la restauración del SAM.
for contributing to the restoration of the MAR. Also to promote help on how to use the financing. There's a pilot for a technical assistance program to identify needs and develop the coral reef business sector. And also through the acceleration program, we are seeking to obtain information from the different sectors related to the reef-dependent communities in order to design tailored financial solutions. All this is part of a strategy of blended finance, as was mentioned by Carla. What do we seek? We seek business solutions that reduce or contribute to the reduction of contamination of water contamination, waste management, overfishing, and climate change. These 3 problems have been seen, and there are many more, but we see that these are the 3 issues that are the three main issues that need to be promoted to promote the conservation of the Mesoamerican Reef. We can think about what can reduce contamination of water. Not necessarily a water treatment plant would be the only solution. There can be other indirect solutions. For example, a beach club implementing water treatment practices for residue management or waste management, or a diving shop that has engines 4 times engines that don't contaminate the water, or different protocols that for the use of solar sunblock that is not affecting the reef, or different solutions to contribute to these different issues. We are not just focused on these 3. If we find there are other businesses that can promote conservation and restoration, they're always welcome. But these are the three main fields that are included in the Healthy Reefs report card of last year. So how can they be knit together? How can they be joined? We are looking at, and these are not the only industries, but these are the ones that we have identified as potential for impact investment and the reef conservation. The transformation and production of sargassum, sustainable tourism, blue bond, carbon solutions of agriculture, coastal agriculture, water treatment, restoration projects for the reef. And there is a wide range of the businesses of hospitality, restaurants, hotels, tourist operators, dive shops, co-managers in the MAR. There are many of that are working together with the government for protected areas. We can work with these co-managers, and any solution that can contribute to conservation of the MAR is more than welcome. We have services, investment services available, and products available designed by VIWALA. There's also the acceleration program. We had the first event in April, and we will have another call or launching or call for applications, we could say, next year. And you can approach us for investment services, whether or not you are part of the acceleration services. We can give you advisory as well to show what other services VIWALA offers. We also have alliances at the ecosystem level. This is a systemic issue that we know, we understand that we need to promote a systemic change. So we're always seeking collaboration strategies, webinars, conversations with different allies in the reef. And if you are all partners or allies in this reef system, we would like to be able to approach you and talk to you as well. And finally, this is what Karla and I have for today. And if there are any questions and answers, if there's any term that you would like to get clarified, or if you need more examples, etc., please go ahead and write the questions on the chat box. Thank you, Grace and Karla. You have given us a very big lesson to learn. There are some questions that have been written in or messages in the chat box, which I will share. And if you have any other questions, please go ahead and write them on the chat box on Zoom. One of the questions is, you mentioned there are conferences in the field of impact investment. What are some of these, what do you recommend are some of these conferences that we can participate in? So yes, in Latin America, there are several. The most famous one is called FLEE, Latin American Forum for Impact Investment. It's 13th in version. There's also in Mexico. There's also a FLEE conference in Guatemala. It's going to happen in November. This year is going to happen in Roatan. It's not even in Guatemala, it's in Honduras. There's also another one called CLIC, which is in Ecuador. There's also one in Brazil, Latin Impact. They all talk about impact investment. There are different components focused on how to catalyze investment. Others impact in funding evaluation. There are different fields that you can
Perfecto,
find
Carla, muchas
in this
gracias.
ecosystem.
También me parece que esto sí lo comentaron, pero bueno, para repetirlo, nos preguntan
Also, there's a
cuándo va a haber las
question,
siguientes
when
convocatorias.
are the different
El programa de aceleración no tenemos la fecha exacta,
applications
pero
open
desde el
for?
principio.
At the beginning of next year, we are going to be
Más
opening
obviamente
applications, so please check on the Mar Fund Blue New Ventures. We're going to be publishing all the opening applications for the MAR leadership program. Also, we don't have a date yet, but it's also coming soon. For financial products, just approach us and email us. We're going to write our email on the chat box so you can write to us if you have any questions or
Gracias, Grace. Otra de
want
las
to know more
preguntas
about it.
dice que si hay
Another
alguna
question
institución
is,
o banco
are there
específico convocado
institutions or
para el
specific
financiamiento de
banks
impacto
that
positivo?
are focused
Esto
on
es
impact,
enfocado en la parte del
positive
medio
impact,
ambiente.
focused on the environment?
Actualmente,
Currently,
no sé si en México hay varias agencias
I'm
del
not
SAM.
sure about Mexico, but there are several development agencies working in these topics. IDB is one of them.
USAID tiene un par de
USAID has a couple of
enfocados en la península de
projects
Yucatán. No estoy segura si
focused in the
Centroamérica,
Yucatan
pero la
Peninsula.
Yucatán
I'm not sure about
trabaja
Central
en zonas
America,
costeras,
but they're all related to coastal marine restoration.
la
We
GIZ,
have
la
the
GIZ
GIZ, the German Development Organization, has a project.
llama como Caribe Circular.
It's called Circular
Ahí en
Caribbean.
varios países del SAM.
It's in Quintana Roo in some of the MARF
Son los que, la
countries.
verdad, son los que con los que
There are a
hemos
couple
interactuado
more
con
that
estas
we have
agencias
had
del SAM.
contact with. There are some development organizations with international organisms. There is also the four governments in the Mar region that are with their different secretariats or ministries are involved in these fields, in these areas of conservation, water treatment, sustainable fishing, as part of their sustainable development goals at a local level.
Gracias, Grace. Justamente nos hacen ahí
Thank you,
un
Grace.
comentario y pregunta.
And also there's a
Nos preguntan
comment,
si hay algún contacto con
if there is a
GIZ,
contact with GIZ, the
para
German
identificar hoteles y
agency, they
restaurantes
have
en Quintana Roo.
implemented guidelines
Mira, no sabía lo de los
to
gracias a ti.
deplastify hotels
Contactaremos también para ver
and restaurants in Quintana Roo.
por ejemplo, de colaboraciones que estamos súper abiertos.
The type of collaboration, that's precisely the type of collaboration that we're looking into.
Chiste no es inventar el hilo
And
negro,
the idea is not to
desde lo que ya existe.
invent new things, but to be able to
Les buscaremos para
look for ideas and join efforts.
Perfecto, gracias, Grace. Y
Thank you,
otra pregunta
Grace.
específica
A
con
couple of
respecto a este
questions
tema
more
adicional.
that
Una
are
pregunta,
related
me
is,
parece que cerquita. ¿Cómo contactar a
Elvira,
empresas que puedan
how can
participar,
we
tales como tiendas de buceo,
approach
hoteles, etcétera?
to
Y otra
businesses
cuestión, me
that
parece que
can
para Carla,
participate,
es
such
cómo
as
podemos
dive
estar
shops, hotels,
aplicando a estas
etc.?
nuevas herramientas de
And
comercio y
how can we
conservación en el
approach
ecosistema del medio ambiente.
more businesses in the field of the ecosystem and the environment? Thank you for your questions. Dive shops and other stores or coastal businesses, the best window is the investment window, especially now because the acceleration program already begun. For the investment window, I will write Antonio's email on the chat box, which is going to be, you can contact him on this field. In Cozumel, for example, there is a evaluation to see their needs and see how we approach them and help them. You can call us, you can email us, depending on how you want to approach us. If you have a business, if you're a member of the government, if you're working with a program, it all depends on how you want to work as part of a team and get more involved. but it is wonderful to hear that you're all interested in this collaboration tool. Thank you, Grace. There's also a comment or question here. There's in the call for proposals, they published they indicate priority sites. We did not apply for the Rio Hondo communities because I consulted them and they did not see any relation, but it does have a relationship because the Rio Hondo River flows into the Bay of Chetumal from there to the Mar in Mexico, Belize. It is also connected to the Bacalar Lagoon system. Will you consider these connections to your priority sites? Well, there are 18 natural areas, complementary areas within our vision. If you are not part of these areas, you can apply. This will help us to grow and be part of the systematic growth of MAR impact. Even if you're not part of the Rio Hondo Basin, there can be an impact in Belize or Ixcalac and other areas close by. So yes, we can ask you to participate in the next application or call for application. And if there are any windows for investment that can be addressed. Thank you, Grace, for your recommendation. And finally, the last comments that Carla or Grace would like to add for these organizations, for businesses, for all the guests that are joining us today that are focused in conservation of the Mar region and who are interested or might be interested in being part of this blended impact investment strategies. On my part, I suggest you approach us. And as Grace mentioned, what we need to is to understand and to learn more of the situation, to be able to participate as part as the whole solution of the ecosystem and to be part of the conversation. So you can contact us. You have our emails, which I'm going to write again on the chat. So one thing is to talk more about these matters and also to encourage yourselves to experiment with these types of tools, financing tools, and see how you can think outside the box with these new methodologies to be creative and be more involved with how blended finance can be part of conservation initiatives that you're already executing. Thank you, Grace and Carla, for accompanying us in this webinar. You have left us with very valuable information. We thank you greatly for, on behalf of Mar Fund, Mar Invest. And I would like to comment that if you want to watch this webinar once again, which is going to be recorded, we are posting it on the social media that you see on screen. And finally, we would like you to answer a survey that will be sent to all of you on the chat. So please fill it out, and we thank you for once again for joining us. Thank you, Carla and Grace. Excellent. Have a great day to all of you. Thank you.